The Peruvian Public Prosecutor's Office reported the death of an indigenous leader in the city of Cusco as a result of the police repression during a march against the president, Dina Boluarte. Venezuela's president, Nicolás Maduro Moros, will deliver his annual address to the nation and will provide a report of the balance of the year 2022 before the National Assembly. And after 3 days of strikes, about 7,000 nurses of 2 New York City major hospitals reached an agreement with employers over wages, working shifts, and staffing levels. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. And now we begin with the news. Social unrest continues in Peru as protests against the Dina Boluarte administration spread throughout the country. Thousands continue to protest in rejection of the government of Dina Boluarte, asking for the closure of the Congress and demanding early elections. The demonstrations, which first erupted when former President Pedro Castillo was ousted on December 7th, resumed with renewed strength on January the 4th, after a brief truce, and are still ongoing. Mobilizations and road blockades extend across 32 Peruvian provinces and are mainly concentrated in the southern region of the country. Official authorities have so far disregarded the popular claims while increasing police and military repression against the protesters. The Puno region has been one of the most affected by deaths, with 17 civilians killed in the city of Juliaca, while recent clashes in Cusco have left 1 new casualty. According to the National Ombudsman's Office, at least 40 have died in the country as a result of the violent repression. In this context, the Peruvian Public Prosecutor's Office reported the death of an indigenous leader in the city of Cusco as a result of the police repression during a march against the president, Dina Boluarte. The Peruvian agency regrets the death of Remoncandia Guevara, the president of the community of Anansaya Urinsaya Coyana de Anta, who became the first person in the Cusco region to die during the recent protests in the country. During the mobilizations in the city, at least 22 people were injured due to police repression. Now we move on to other topics. On Wednesday, Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva attended in Brasilia an inauguration ceremony of 2 new female ministers in his government. Sonia Guajajara was sworn in as Ministry of Indigenous Peoples at the Planalto Palace in Brasilia in presence of the head of the state, lawmakers, and representatives from the country's black and indigenous movements. Guajajara is an influential indigenous rights activist and lawmaker, widely known as the leader of the main umbrella group for Brazil's many indigenous tribes, and is a member of the Amazon Guajajara. Likewise, Aniel Franco also attended Wednesday's inauguration ceremony after she was asked by the President Lula to become the nation's Minister of Racial Equality. During her speech, Aniel recalled her sister, the Brazilian human rights and racial justice activist Marielle Franco, assassinated in 2018 while she was a member of Rio de Janeiro's City Council.
We know that it won't be easy to overcome 522 years in 4 years, but we are willing to make this moment the great revival of ancestral strength, the Brazilian soul and spirit. Brazil without indigenous people, never again. We are here because we have a project for the country, a project of a country where a black woman can access and remain in different decision-making spaces without having her life taken away with 5 shots to the head.
And Brazil's Supreme Federal Court ratified on Wednesday the 90-day suspension of Brazilia's Governor Ibanez Rocha for failing to contain pro-Bolsonaro riots. The justices of the Supreme Court ruled to also maintain the pre-trial detention order against the former Federal District Security Secretary Anderson Torres and the former district's military police commander Fabio Augusto Vieira. This is based on a decision made by the Federal Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes, alleging security flaws that allow the invasion of governmental premises by supporters of the far-right former President Jair Bolsonaro last Sunday. Justice de Moraes stated that absolutely nothing justifies the omission and coexistence of the Public Security Secretary and of the Federal District Governor with criminals who had already announced they will commit violent acts against the constituted powers. On Thursday, the government of Brazil decided to retrieve its ambassador to occupied Palestine in a clear shift of relations with the Israeli regime. In a statement, the Brazilian Foreign Ministry withdrew its ambassador to the Palestine territories usurped by Israel, General Gerson Menandro Garcia de Freitas, who was appointed by the former far-right President Jair Bolsonaro, a close ally of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The name of the official who will take the vacant position is still unknown. It was also detailed that the Brazilian government has undertaken a distancing in these relations with Israel, shifting towards a more balanced position in relation to the conflict between Tel Aviv and Palestine. And now we move on to other topics. In the Dominican Republic, 6 provinces are on green alert due to heavy rains. The provinces affected by the alert are La Vega, Espaillat, Monseñor Manuel, Santiago Atomayor, and Maria Trinidad Sanchez. The Emergency Operations Center reported that the situation comes as a result of a trough affecting the territory. The National Meteorological Office forecasts for this Thursday that clouds will increase at times, with moderate to heavy downpours locally and isolated gusts of wind in areas of the northeast, southeast, southwest, as well as the central mountain range. People living near streams and rivers are advised to be attentive to the evolution of weather conditions and to refrain from crossing a river or a stream if it has an unusually large volume of water, and to contact relief agencies if necessary. Let's take a short break now, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. On Thursday, President Nicolás Maduro Moros will deliver his annual address to the nation and will provide a report of the balance of the year 2022 before the National Assembly. The President of the Republic, Nicolás Maduro Moros, stated that during the annual report of his administration in 2022, he will fully demonstrate the outlook of the economic and social recovery. Also, in his opinion, the weaknesses that the country is still going through. The head of state assured that this 2023 will be one effort, collective work and improvements for the country. He also emphasized that according to the cabinet's estimates, this year the programs for the benefit of the people will be strengthened with the 1% of the good government and the articulation with the organizations of the people's power. The Legislative Assembly of El Salvador approved on Wednesday another 30-day extension of the state of emergency in force since the end of March 2022 to deal with violence generated by the gangs. The pro-government legislators ratified the proposal to extend the state of emergency by 67 votes in favor. This will be the 10th time that the measure is extended to increase the efficiency of the fight against gangs in the country. According to the president of the legislative body, Ernesto Castro, the measure has brought peace of mind to the communities. Thanks to the emergency regime, 61,300 suspected gang members have been arrested, although about 3,300 have been released by order of the prosecutor's office and other judicial instances. And Cuba will take on the pro-tempore presidency of the G77 plus China in 2023 on Thursday. As such, Cuba intends to foster international cooperation for post-pandemic recovery, promote common interests, foster an open and transparent multilateral trading system, and advocate for universal access to healthcare and education. The G77 is the largest multilateral group, currently comprising 134 developing countries plus China. Founded by the Non-Aligned Movement in 1964, the group represents 75% of the UN membership and 80% of the world's population. The presidency handover ceremony will be attended virtually by Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel before UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, 77th Assembly President Zaba Kurozi, and the Pakistani Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. The United States and Japan unveiled plans on Wednesday to strengthen their alliance to counter threats from North Korea and China, which they perceive as the greatest security challenge in the region. The U.S. and the Japanese foreign and defense ministers condemned China's increasing aggressiveness in the Indo-Pacific and elsewhere. They also called out Russia for its military operation in Ukraine and castigated North Korea for increasing its nuclear and missile programs. In a joint statement, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, and their Japanese counterpart Yoshima Hayashi and Yasukazu Hamada said the Asian giant presents an unprecedented threat to international order and vowed to redouble their efforts to counter it. London Mayor Sadiq Khan on Thursday called on Downing Street to admit the immense damage caused by Britain's exit from the European Union and acknowledge that Brexit is not working. Sadiq Khan argued that the Brexit has weakened the economy, fractured the union, and tarnished the UK's reputation. The Labour mayor called for a recognition of the need for greater alignment with European neighbours that enables a pragmatic debate on the benefits of being part of the customs union and single market. Support for Brexit is at an all-time low in the UK, while less than a third of Britons believe it was the right decision, according to a November poll by the YouGov Institute. And on Thursday, Spain's primary care physicians resumed strike in Madrid. Primary care physicians and pediatricians in Madrid are once again on indefinite strike as from January the 12th, after the dialogue with the Ministry of Health held on Wednesday failed. The parties met for a seventh negotiation meeting that lasted almost 3 hours after a temporary suspension of the strikes that had been agreed on December 22nd. However, union leaders have decided to resume the protest, considering their requirements are not being met by the authorities. Workers demand more personnel to alleviate the collapse of the health system and ensure better patient care. The strike will now also be extended in Andalusia, Catalonia, Aragon, the Valencian Community, and Extremadura. And on Thursday, after 3 days of strikes, about 7,000 nurses of 2 New York City major hospitals reached an agreement with employers over wages, working shifts, and staffing levels. The New York State Nurses Association Union reached tentative deals with Mount Sinai Health System and Montefiore Health System. At Montefiore, the hospital agreed to financial penalties for failing to comply with agreed-upon staffing levels, and the deal includes 170 new nursing positions, a 19.1% increase in pay, and lifetime health coverage for eligible retirees. The nurses had been arguing that staffing shortages have caused widespread burnout, hindering their ability to properly care for their patients. The healthcare staff still need to sign the deal to make it binding, but so far the unions have said it meets their demands. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. European Parliament's leaders on Thursday discussed measures to prevent corruption and former lawmakers from lobbying on behalf of business or governments. The institution is still dealing with a major corruption scandal involving a member of parliament. EU Parliament President Roberta Metsola and political groups' presidents meet to discuss measures and actions to be taken, which will be presented by Metsola next week. The meeting came just a month after Belgian authorities arrested 4 people on charges of corruption, money laundering, and the participation in a criminal organization. Lawmakers and officials consider that it may be the biggest corruption scandal to have hit the bloc. Those charged include parliamentarian Eva Kaili and her boyfriend Francesco Giorgi, an assistant there. And India on Thursday convened a virtual summit of more than 100 developing countries to evolve a uniform strategy for seeking help for overcoming economic hardships. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the summit virtually, saying it was clear the world is in state of crisis. Modi also told the leaders of Bangladesh, Vietnam, Thailand, Uzbekistan and other nations that to predict how long this state of instability will last is difficult. India's External Affairs Ministry confirmed that spread over closed-door sessions on Thursday and Friday, the summit will discuss key issues such as the worldwide impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, and mounting debt and inflationary pressures taking a toll on developing countries' economies. And the first phase of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Headquarters project was inaugurated in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa. Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang, who is on a 7-day visit to Africa, and Musa Faki Mahamat, the African Union Commission chairman, attended the inaugural ceremony. Covering an area of more than 23 square meters, the landmark project will fortify Africa's public health system and capacity. Once fully completed, it will be the first Pan-African centers for disease control and prevention on the continent. The center will be fully equipped with modern offices, high-end laboratories and accessories. Construction works for the project began in December 2020. An Iranian state media released a video on Thursday implicating former Deputy Defense Minister and dual Iranian-British citizen Alireza Akbari in the 2020 assassination of top military scientist Mohsen Faridakzad. The claim comes a day after Iran sentenced Akbari on charges of spying for Britain. Iran's intelligence ministry said Akbari was one of the most important agents of the British intelligence service in Iran, who had access to some very sensitive centers in the country and had knowingly provided information to the enemy. He was a close ally of Ali Shahmani, currently Iran's Supreme National Security Council Secretary, who served as defense minister from 1997 to 2005 when Akbari was his deputy. Mohsen Faridakzad was key in Iran's development of nuclear energy and was killed in a 2020 attack with a satellite-controlled machine gun. In Benin, the first parliamentary elections were held since the return of the opposition after a 4-year absence. According to official information, more than 6 million citizens were summoned to vote for the 109 deputies of the 7 political parties on Sunday, January the 8th. They pointed out that the election day passed calmly, while according to observers, the turnout was lower than in 2019. The results of these elections are expected to be published on Friday. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.